when you're talking about how point of sale can benefit those operators, where does that focus need to be?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of really great things outside of the revenue piece. But that being said, I do think you can use the same strategy in a different market. Obviously, the middle market operators are on a tighter budget, and it still means a lot to us to be able to offer the same choice and opportunities to those residents and those communities.
Welcome to Tips from Trestle, the Senior Living Food and Hospitality Podcast. This podcast explores the senior living industry with a unique focus on food, hospitality, and the community experience. I'm your host, Aaron Fish. My goal for this podcast: educate, inform, and inspire leaders in senior living. How? By bringing the resident and customer experience to the front of mind in our industry. We should bring the passionate spirit of food and hospitality to everything that we do and everyone we serve each and every day. So what are we waiting for? Let's get to it. Welcome to this live episode of Tips from Trestle, the Senior Living Food and Hospitality Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Fish, and we have a great episode lined up for you today. I'll be speaking with Matt Stenerson from eMenuChoice about how operators can improve the resident experience with their point of sale systems. So, Matt, thanks for partnering with us today for this live episode of Tips from Trestle.
Yeah, great to be back, Aaron. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So let's jump in. We want to talk about how operators can create and kind of maximize the experience, maximize their success with point of sale. And so obviously there's a lot of luxury senior living that's happening around. That's kind of the focus of what we're doing as an industry right now. And so when you think about what eMenuChoice can do to enhance that dining experience, what would you share with the listeners and everyone with us live today about that?
Yeah, well, one thing that we put a lot of focus on in our feature set the last couple of years is around revenue capture. I'm sure if you've talked to us, you've heard it from us, especially if you're in this part of the market. I think one thing that gets missed, maybe explicitly in the conversations, is sort of how that revenue is not just for the communities and for the ownership and everything else, but it sort of can be reciprocal back to the residents. So how can you use that revenue capture to improve your dining services or your experiences, or even like outside of dining, but specifically in this case, dining? We're seeing a lot of people use the features within eMenuChoice to offer more a la carte options, more flexibility in their dining programs. And as they're capturing more revenue, actually spend more on their food. And so they can use the increased revenue to spend more on food, which makes the residents happy, provides higher quality ingredients, more choices. And we see it as kind of like a virtuous cycle that sort of feeds itself as it gets started.
Yeah, you're so true in that. And when I was working for operators, I was always one of the first things I would do when I was selling the opportunity to bring on a point of sale vendor like eMenuChoice, where it would be, you may not see tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars in food service revenue, but even if you get 5, 6, 8,000 more a month and you put that back into your food cost, your PRD number can go way up and you get a lot more bang for your buck and you can enhance those offerings like you just said.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we have people that are spending into the double digits where some other operators, their eyes water when they hear that, but they're still running that from a really positive revenue standpoint to make up for it.
Yeah. When people ask me, well, what should my PRD be? What should my average be? The national average is somewhere between like 875 and 950, right? That operators are running with now. But you add an additional, like I said, 5, 6, $7,000, you can get into that 11, 12, $13 range with zero impact on that bottom line, which I think is so important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh, One of the things though, that as the industry is evolving, we're starting to talk about like boomers and this huge growth in potential residents. One area that a lot of places like Nick and Senior Housing News, they're starting to talk more about the middle market, right? So these operators that don't necessarily have super high-end budgets, their communities are designed for maybe your more average resident as opposed to those that have the bigger bank accounts. And so when you're talking about how point of sale can benefit those operators, where does that focus need to be?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of really great things outside of the revenue piece. I think, you spoke with Dan from my team not long ago. I would
Right.
definitely recommend people go back and listen to that episode. Dan talked a lot about sort of the roots of eMenuChoice and just sort of before we were focused on a lot of the revenue features, how a point of sale can help beyond the revenue side of things.
Yeah.
But that being said, I do think you can use the same strategy in a different market. Obviously, the middle market operators are on a tighter budget because the residents are. This is where we started as a company, and still a huge amount of our customers are in this space, and it still means a lot to us to be able to offer the same choice and opportunities to those residents and those communities. So really, it's like every time you can capture maybe like $2 extra for an extra soup or dessert that previously was walking out the door as a part of a meal charge. Or, hey, can I just get like an extra portion of the main in a box to go? And now not
Yeah.
only are you like giving away that main, but now they're not going to come down for dinner because they have that. So every time that walks out the door, rather than sort of upcharging it with an a la carte option or an add-on, that $2 is something that you can now invest back into the program or back into other programs.
Yeah. I love that you're talking about this idea that senior living operators can be thinking more like restaurateurs and having a la carte approaches. Cause I literally just this week was having a menu conversation with a client about, well, how can we expand our menu? Should we offer multiple special selections? And with that comes, well, the added cost of overage production and potential waste. And I just simply said, if you expand the variety of choices on your always available or your a la carte menu, you can keep those costs down. And having a system like eMenuChoice to be able to let you do that is such a big deal. And the revenue capture piece on a cup of soup versus just a full meal sale is a big, big piece of that, I think.
Technology continues to drive changes in senior care, and that includes food service. eMenuChoice is an award-winning point-of-service application for managing the dining function in senior living communities. This mobile, touchscreen-enabled software enhances the dining experience for residents while streamlining processes for staff. The flexibility and functionality of eMenuChoice makes it an effective solution for any type of senior living environment, from independent and assisted living to skilled nursing facilities. It works for production kitchens or restaurant-style service with options for per meal or a la carte pricing, and accommodates a variety of payments, including bill to account, meal credits, and credit cards. Created by a senior care provider with more than a century of experience serving older adults, eMenuChoice eliminates communication barriers between staff and residents while enabling person-centered choices and greater resident satisfaction. eMenuChoice, transforming dining for senior living.
Yeah, I think operators in any market can use features like premium section as well to offer like special items. You might have a prime rib or like a crab dinner, and it's an add-on to a regular charge. So you can exceed your PRD for like a special occasion or once a week or something, knowing that you're going to cover that on the back end with extra revenue. The other thing that I want to mention, I think we've talked about this before, maybe the last time I was on, but I think it's important to realize, and I think maybe it'll come up in the panel discussion later, is that $2 soup that's separate from the meal charge, that's or dessert or whatever it might be. That can be an extra if they've already had a soup and they want an extra one, but it could also be a really nice way to open the opportunity for a resident to only spend $2 rather than a full meal charge if they're just looking to get a soup. So it's not always just about like more revenue, more revenue, more revenue. It's like appropriate revenue for what the customer in this case wants to have.
Yeah, I think it lets those middle market operators feel more high end by being able to offer that without being put into that box of, we got to add an extra $1,000 a month to our rent to cover it. So
Right.
it's a great point you make. So we've been talking about food and dining, but obviously point of sale in general has the opportunity to really allow operators to kind of expand their lifestyle options, some of their service offerings. And so I'd love for you to talk a little bit about how, as these operators you're working with have evolved what they're doing, how eMenuChoice has adapted to support them.
Yeah, the communities that we're working with are evolving. I think we're evolving too in the types of communities that we work with. And we've become a lot more than what we started as, like a dining management platform. We
Yeah.
have customers all over the US that are using eMenu in their salons, including like booking reservations at a salon, like booking a seat for a given time. Convenience stores. We're also seeing a lot of communities using eMenuChoice to like book and pay for things like exercise classes, whether it's like first party offering or whether it's even like a third party coming in, and then they can use the reports to like square up with the third party at the end of the day or the billing period or wherever it might be. Even things like field trips, concierge service, all these things. And the beauty is they can all be used under the same spend down accounts if that's how people want it to be set up.
Yeah, and having the ability to, I know eMenuChoice does this, have different meal plans in this. I'm using air quotes in this instance,
Yeah,
to be
yeah,
able to
yeah.
plug in all those different services as an option. Maybe you're giving them, instead of a 500 or 500 points or $500 meal, maybe you're giving them 700 or 800 for services across the
Yeah,
entire
campus credits or
campus.
something. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So it's really great to be able to know that you don't have to have multiple systems to do reservations and to do, charges. It can all be wrapped in under one system that communicates with all of your other systems and with accounting and those kinds of things.
Yeah, you can even have different accounts. So you could have your meal account. You could also have just like a generic kind of gift card account that can be used across all the venues in a community, or kind of really the options are limitless. We try to
Yeah.
tamp down people on how crazy they get with it, because the more you have, the more you manage. But
Right.
yeah, ultimately it's pretty flexible to allow things like I can only use this in the dining room, but I can use this across the whole campus, or maybe this is just for transportation or whatever it might be.
Yeah, it's such a great feature. And that allows those operators who are budget conscious or revenue minded, however it might be, to figure out new ways to capture that, as opposed to, hey, I need to go to the doctor, so I'm going to grab a Lyft or an Uber. Hey, I can schedule transportation with the community and pay half the price I would for a Lyft, but the community benefits. So definitely win-win
Yeah.
for both communities and residents.
Yeah, exactly. Like the community can offer it and get extra revenue, but at the end of the day, it's the ability to offer more service to the residents, which is at the end of the day what we're all about.
Absolutely. So, as we wrap up this part of the podcast, when you're thinking about next year, everybody's starting to think about budgets and 2025 strategic planning. What kind of features and innovations are you guys at eMenuChoice specifically kind of looking at or thinking about to support these kind of changing needs of operators and residents as we look at next year?
Well, I always have a lot of ideas, and I try not to let my head go wild with ideas. Being sort of the technical founder of the company, I always have a lot of projects in my head that I'd like to work on. But just sort of like responding to customers and prospects and what we're hearing out there. We really invested a lot of time and just invested a lot this year into like improving the user experience within the platform. Um, it's always been amazing to me how much progress you can make, just kind of like one step at a time. If you just keep going like over a year or two. I like to tell my team that if you used the app like it was 2 years ago, you'd think that it was crazy that we ever lived like that. But 2 years ago it seemed good, but now it's just that much better. We'll look to continue doing that kind of stuff because it always helps. It helps our team. It helps the residents. It helps the operators. It helps everybody. I'm also really interested in expanding some offerings around recipes, nutrition, production management, where I think we're really good on the execution side of things.
Mhm.
But we're hearing more and more about more like things on the production and recipe side. We have this product called Fresh Menus. It offers really great dietitian approved menu cycles, including the recipes and the extensions. But I'd like to sort of expand more around the capabilities of that so they can be more flexible and offer more solutions. And then finally, and there's other things, but just off the top of my head, like finally, integrations are something that we're always focused on. So we really like to work with friends and partners in the industry to enable interoperability and avoid double entry and things like that. So that's something we're always looking to continue to press on.
Yeah. Having worked with you guys on the operations side in the past, one of the things I've always appreciated about your guys' approach to working with customers is the roadmap is always open for discussion. That makes sense. Where you're like, well, let's hear your idea. Let's see if it fits in what we're doing and what we can develop. And getting that customer feedback makes it so much more user friendly on the front end. So I thought I'd share that because it's always one of those things that with other technology and software providers, I've not always experienced that. So that's a nice addition to the conversation, I think.
Yeah, not to get too sidetracked out of a resident experience, but I think all the panelists that we'll talk to, I can think of specific features that they've thought of and we've talked about and we've ended up adding that have been helpful to them. But then at least 2 or 3 other customers will tell me like, oh, this is such a great thing. And the idea came from Paige or Kim or Katie, So I really enjoy that part of our community and our customer base. So we'll definitely continue to do that.
Awesome. Well, Matt, thank you for this one-on-one, letting me kind of pick your brain about resident experience. And so let's bring in our panelists.
Yeah.
So there it is, everybody. Another one in the books. Thanks again for tuning in. Please follow, like, and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to follow us on social media at Tips from Trestle. You can also learn more about the work I do by following me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and even TikTok. And be sure to check out Trestle Hospitality Concepts at www.trestlehospitalityconcepts.com. I'm your host, Aaron Fish, and this has been another episode of Tips from Trestle.